We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to the special edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant, and normally it's your home theater and AV questions answered. But as Tom mentioned, this is a special episode, and so both of us are here with the fellow who is quite often our pinch hitter, our guest co-host, whenever Tom is occasionally away, or I am very rarely away. It does happen sometimes.
It does happen.
And that, of course, is our good friend Lee Overstreet. Hello, Lee.
Hi, pinch reviewing this time, I suppose. It's weird to be here with both of you. It's just nice to be here.
That's right. We received, as you might expect if you've listened to this podcast long enough, that when SVS came out with our Pro series of subwoofers, they reached out to us and said, Tom, you love subs. Would you like to review some subs for us? I said, yeah. If you want the review to be, my room is very small, and the new subs sound exactly like the old subs, except I don't have to turn them up as loud, then that's what the review will be. And I said,
yep.
And if you want it to be even worse than that, because if you send them to Rob, who has an even smaller room, but larger subs, his review will be, sounds exactly the same as my current subs, but I have to turn them up louder.
I have to turn them up, yeah.
Yeah, I might have to put them all the way up to 8 out of 100 instead of only 4 like my current ones.
Oh, my God.
Could be the case. But yes, we are indeed talking about the 2000 Pro series of subwoofers from SVS.
Yes.
And specifically, we're going to be talking about the SB-2000 Pro. Now, SVS's lineup is pretty easy to understand. The letters in SB stand for a sealed box. The other members of the SVS 2000 Pro series lineup of subs are the PB, standing for ported box, or PC, standing for ported cylinder. But we're not reviewing those ported models. What was sent to Lee were SB 2000 Pro subwoofer sealed box, a pair of them, because this is SVS and we always go for dual subs. But we're gonna talk about a whole range of things today in Lee's review here. Yeah.
Before we get into that, Lee, let's go ahead and get some of the pleasantries out of the way. This is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Yesterday, we're doing nothing but a review, but in general, all we do is answer your home theater and AV questions. You don't know how to set up your sub? Call us. You don't know how to...
It's not really a call.
Well, you can, technically.
Oh, yeah. We have an offline rant line. AVRant.com is our website. That's right.
That's right. And the phone number is listed there. You can leave us a voicemail.
That's right.
We won't play it on the podcast. I used to, but we won't anymore. But, you're looking to set up a home theater from scratch, you can contact us. You've got some gear and something's not working quite right, let us know. We'll help you out. So to contact us, it's really easy. Email us at question@avrant.com. You can go to www.avrant.com. Leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/AVRant Podcast. We're very responsive on that. As well as youtube.com/AVRant, where we are not at all responsive, but you can, in fact, watch our recording sessions simply because we all live in different places and we have to see each other while we do this anyway, so we might as well record it, and that's where we put it up there. But we turn the comments off because YouTube. If you're going to contact us directly, Rob is at rob@avrant.com. His Twitter is at FirstReflectum. Tom at avrant.com. My Twitter is at avrant_Tom. I was trying to think what Lee's contact information is, or even if he wants to even give it out.
We do. We just give out my Twitter handle at Lee Overtweet.
Oh, Lee Overtweet at Lee
Overtweet is my Twitter handle. Yes.
There you go. You want to contact Lee and find, if you think you want some more specific information about his review, you know who to contact. It's Lee. So
I'm happy to talk about these subs because it was quite an experience.
Right. Rob said this is SVS, so of course they had dual subs. No, it's AVRant. Of course they had dual subs. Lee did not want dual subs when I first approached him with this. He was like, I don't know if we're going to be able to convince the wife. I'm like, you're getting 2 subs. All
now,
right.
that's not exactly true. I didn't mind two. I was concerned about those bigger ones, the PBs.
Right.
The
They are
PB2000s. And certainly the cylinders, I turned to my wife and said, what about a cylinder this big? No. So as
She's
soon as
seen
I held
those.
my hand out and showed how tall it would be,
She's
no.
seen those. Those are in my room. They're almost
know,
exactly
but-
the same size.
I know, but it just wouldn't work with us, and that's fine. And frankly, that's not necessary. I'm already turning levels down at home now, and it's a new experience for me. So I got the sealed boxes, and I'm kind of glad I did. But the two were nice, and believe it or not, it fits right into the room, and it's not terribly noticeable. It's worked out quite well, frankly.
So first of all, before we talk about anything else, we got to talk about your system and we got to talk about your room, because as we say all the time on this podcast, the room is a big part of your sound, but the room and the subs work together to create the bass. Therefore, if we don't know what your room is like, we cannot know what kind of bass or bass issues you may have. So tell us a little bit about the gear that you have and your room.
All right, so I have a room that is a classic mid-century ranch home living room. It's 12 feet deep approximately and about 19 and a half feet wide. And we sit on the couch looking across the short distance. So our heads are maybe 9 feet from a 65-inch OLED, an LG OLED.
Okay.
And I've had the same speakers for a lot of years. My tower speakers left, right, center, and my two surrounds I've had since the year 2000. But they're good speakers, and I love them, and that's just what. And now my receiver, the original receiver I bought in 2000, is sitting next to me in this office because I don't get rid of anything if it still works. And then I bought another receiver in 2014. It had a HDMI output go bad in a lightning storm because we live in Alabama, and that's what happens here. We have incredible weather. This is the anniversary of a terrible, terrible, deadly tornado in Alabama as we record this. So it's nice to be doing something different than thinking about that. And the weather was gorgeous today. So anyway, replaced the receiver just last year with a not quite new, a refurbished from Accessories for Less Yamaha RX 1070.
Okay.
And that thing's been a dream. It's perfect for what I need. I remember talking to Rob about it, asking questions, and came down to, if you don't think you're going to have more than 7 speakers, that's the one for you, and that's what I have. So
did you mention the sender channel? I don't remember you mentioned. Okay, so you have a 5 point. Well, before this, you had a 5.0.
5.0 is what I have, and it's all Yamaha speakers. I was a Yamaha fanboy since high school, because in high school I was the audio video guy. Surprise. I ran the audio system for pep rallies and sporting events and stuff, and it was a Yamaha system, so I just you get a name brand that you're stuck on, but I know them and I like them. So that's my system. It's all sitting on a low self-built, I'm very proud of, TV stand that has shelves for all the components and everything, and that's my system. We have some pictures that we can show you, and yeah, that's been the same for quite a long time. And it's not that I didn't want subwoofers. It's just that the system that I had, the tower speakers I have, I should have written down my model number, like a 1738 or something. Anyway, they are 4-way speakers, and they have 15-inch woofers that are side firing. And although I knew the whole time that maybe these aren't perfectly accurate, they really would rock the house. And my cousin used to live across the street, and when we were playing Rock Band, she just knew to come over when it started thumping in her living room. So those speakers could do something, but I knew that that's not perfect, but it was enough to enjoy movies and other fun things. So, I never could justify, every time $500 came up where you might get a sub that would improve the situation, something else needed $500 more than the bass in my living room, because it was kind of fun.
Yeah, this is something we're definitely going to be digging into, which is that you have speakers that on their own they are capable of playing bass, they are capable of getting down pretty low and getting pretty loud, but you are limited in where you can place your front, left, right speakers, because they have to go where it's going to make sense for front, left, right speakers to go. And that isn't always necessarily the best place to be producing bass within your room. I wanted to clarify one more thing about your room before we move on any further, which is that you gave some rough dimensions, but your room is not enclosed and it is not a perfect rectangle, correct?
No, it's not. One door to the den always stays open from this living room, and one of the short ends off to the side, side, if you're sitting on the couch, it's off to your right, is really just an open wall into a foyer that extends another about 4 feet.
Okay.
And it's got wood floors in there, and there's a closet that's closed. So really, it's almost like the room is 12 by 23,
right?
Because it really just opens up into that. Not completely. There's an opening that I think was, how wide was that? About 8 of the 12 feet deep, something like that. Is open into that foyer.
Yeah,
so
we want to make sure that we stress that in this because one thing, if you're coming new to AVRant or if you've been listening for a long time, we'll talk about the research that was done over at Harman, predominantly by Sean Olive and Todd Welty, stuff that was written by Dr. Floyd Toole before, and a lot of that mathematically, if you have a perfectly enclosed rectangle of a room, you can work out the best place to position 1, 2, 3, 4 subwoofers just based on mathematics, essentially. But most people don't have that. Most people have a more typical room that isn't a perfect rectangle. It's got some openings, and that's something that we really want to talk about, your experience of having gone through setting up subwoofers in that type of a situation. Before we get on to some of the experience with the subs itself, we should go over some of the basic specs of the sub. We've mentioned the model number, which is the SB-2000 Pros, but what is the actual going price on those? I'm in Canada. I don't even get to see the price. They just tell me to check a dealer. This is SVS, svsound.com. You can look these up.
Right. These are $7.99 per. You can get a deal if you buy 2, I think, for $1,500. Is that what they're doing now? I think so.
Sounds about right.
That sounds right. I could scroll back up again and see, but yeah, you can buy 2 for $1,500.
And
US dollars.
Important to note with SVS, shipping is included, and if you end up sending them back, they pay for the return shipping too. So it's a very risky.
If you buy a single sub from SVS and you decide you want to make the jump to the second sub, if it's been within a certain time frame and you call them up, they'll usually give you that discounted price still for that second sub, even though they had to pay for shipping twice.
Fantastic.
On that. So it's very,
so I'm over here
company.
I'm just spoiled rotten because I just received subs out of the blue like magic.
Those of you that haven't been listening to this podcast for many years and won't have heard me mock, I think would be the right word, Lee, and deride him for refusing to buy a sub and to get subs, will know how much genuine joy I took in sending him dual subs and telling him that that he was now going to experience why his full range speakers up front were not doing what he claimed they were doing.
Let me just say,
he claimed it over and over again.
I'm going to say something that Tom wants to hear. Okay, so Tom, smile, sit back, and get ready. You were right.
I know.
Okay.
Tell my wife. Can you tell my wife?
Let me tell you something. I did everything you said. Like, I changed all the crossovers to 80, even though my Yamaha wipeout system was like, oh, you have full range speakers up front. You don't need anything. So I did everything you said. All the crossovers are 80 and walk through the setup like you said. And yes, it's better. I knew it would be better, but I didn't know that it would be this much better.
Okay, well that's teasing it. That's teasing it. We're just
teasing it. All right,
get to the setup.
But real quick,
just to go over the rest of the basic specs, it's a 12-inch driver in these. As we had an interview with Gary Akubian, who's the CEO of SVS, as well as Nick Brown, right? That's who else was on the call with us on our recent interview with them. We went over there something that isn't covered most other places, which is that with these new 2000 Pro Series subs, it's the first time that SVS is using a stamped basket, and right away some people are going to go, oh my goodness, a stamped instead of a cast basket. That must mean that it's some kind of downgrade in quality. Please check out svsound.com. Look at the photos of this quote-unquote stamped basket. That is a whole lot of metal that has been stamped by that. This is no cheap, flimsy stamped basket that's going on here in this 12-inch driver. That is being powered by a 550-watt amplifier. It's their own design. They call it Sledge. They've trademarked that, these Sledge amplifiers. Very importantly, these are digital signal process controlled amplifiers, so it's not as simple as we just threw a big amplifier behind a strong driver. This is like tuned for this specific combination of parts. All of this is inside of what is almost a 14.5-inch cube. You know, the exact dimensions are 14.6 by 14.2 by 14.6, but pretty darn close to being a 14.5-inch cube.
When you pick it up, you feel like you've got something made of unobtainium. This is not a lightweight, cheapo object. I don't care what it looks like on the website. When you get it, it looks like the real deal. You know, I thought at first that what do they call it, the black ash? I didn't want piano black because it wouldn't really go with anything. But it's pretty, and they did a great job with it, and absolutely nothing wrong with the fit and finish. I can't complain about that at all. And it definitely... Nothing's rattling around in this thing. It's solid as
38.6 pounds is it. So it's a dense little near cube that's going on. And speaking of what you just mentioned there, I wanted to mention, what was the experience like receiving the sub and unpacking it and getting to see that finish for the first time?
The UPS did to me what they always did, even though this was before current events, if you know what I mean. They just kind of leave stuff in the carport and go tap tap and run.
Yep.
And so unless you're standing at the door like a puppy dog waiting on your package, you don't know anything's out there. And fortunately, though, I don't think it sat out there longer than maybe an hour or so. And I just peeked out the door as I came in the kitchen, went, look at that. Ran in. I got some video. Hopefully I'll make a nice little video review that you guys can see. I took some video myself, you know, trying to carry these things in. I only noticed after I carried them in, it said team move. And it showed a little icon of two guys lifting it. I'm like,
This is like, okay, so as you go up the line, there's the 1,000, the 2,000, the 3,000, the 4,000. This is the 2,000.
Yeah.
The sealed box, the small one.
The small one. I'm just saying
you need a friend to move it.
Right. It does. You don't need, if you need a friend, you need to work out a little more. I'm a little guy. I got it. Okay. But it was quite a grunt when you get the box. It's an awkward cube. It doesn't have like normal handles and everything. So, but you know, you can tell they pulled down from their award-winning line, the 3,000 line. You can tell they pulled some quality down in there. When you unbox it, I would say nothing about the packaging or anything is particularly fancy pants. But I like their approach. It's no nonsense. The object itself that you're getting at is gorgeous. The rest of it is just packaging like you would expect. You know, it's wrapped up in nice little styrofoam kind of things, and it's got a little bag of that do not eat. I love do not eat. It had a big huge bag of do not eat. You know, there's a power cord, and there's the grill that goes in front, the cloth grill, and there's a little bit of paperwork and a little instruction how to set it up, and that's it. Yeah, that's all you get.
Pretty much all you need.
I also wondered why the power cord was wrapped up, except for the ends of the power cord were sticking out of the plastic. I'm like, why are you keeping the cable fresh? Just ditch the bag, save another penny. Anyway, it was weird. I just found that weird. But no, it's no nonsense. You know, it looks like you're getting a really good product. It looks like you're getting, you know, an $800 product. It does. I don't feel strange about that retail price. If I had pulled it out and it felt wimpy in some way, I might have thought, wow, that's overpriced. But, you know, it went like I expected. It doesn't come with an RCA cable, as you might imagine. You got to get that yourself because they don't know how far away you're putting it. And I remember when they first arrived, and I didn't think about that. I was like, oh, no. So I had to go digging through my old radio stuff. And I found like a ridiculously long cable that was left and right, and I pulled them apart. And anyway.
That'll work.
But it did, and it turned out just fine. I mean, maybe I need a slightly better one, but I don't hear any problem whatsoever. So, and frankly, I think the cable might be over 20 years old, and it still sounds great. They're pretty thick. But, I mean, that's the experience of getting them, you know. When my wife came home and saw the two boxes stacked next to the piano, we have one of those, you know, compact pianos. And the two boxes are taller than that. So, you know, it looked intimidating when who else came over? Was it my dad? Anyway, somebody else commented on, what the heck? What are those speakers? So, you know, nothing too unusual, taking it out. Not much documentation, though. I will say it just tells you pretty much, you know, here's the order in which to do it. If you do what it says and you didn't know much about subs, you'd probably still get it right. It tells you what to do.
The feet were already attached? Yeah,
the feet are attached. Yeah. You don't have to screw anything. There's no assembly of anything.
That's really unusual, honestly. The most subs I've ever gotten from almost any company other than SVS, I've always had to attach the feet.
Right.
Always.
And these are, I didn't measure them, but I'm going to say that they are about 3/4 of an inch, maybe.
Are they the
centimeters.
Rubber, the sound path isolation feet, or are they normal?
I think they're like hard.
Hard cones?
Like they're hard cones. It's hard, pointy cones, and they're not very tall, but they poke deep enough through my carpet.
Yeah. Okay.
So they're doing what they're supposed to do. Yeah. So that was no big deal. Yeah. That's all happened when I got it.
All right.
Took some pictures.
All right. So you got them out.
Yeah.
How did you initially start? Or what guidelines did you set? I mean, because you have a non-traditional room, so you can't just put them across the room from each other. So you must have had a limited number of places you could put these subs.
I did. I was calling them my 4 places. There was either I had a set of Rock Band drums that were sitting in between the right speaker and a china cabinet all the way in the corner. So I moved the Rock Band drums like an adult. And there was the side wall that if you're sitting on the couch is off to your left, and that's toward the carport. So there's the side wall. You could have put it along that side wall. And then where I kind of crossed my fingers and hoped they could go was behind either of 2 chairs that are on either side of the couch and are towed in, angled in, aiming at the TV. So we have a very wide setup where you can sit. Now, I don't care what people in those chairs hear or see, but I care about the whole couch. And that's why we have an OLED, because I needed that field of view. And so I kind of wanted, but so what I did, my approach was, let's approach this like average Joe. I don't know anything about subwoofers. I kind of don't, but I kind of do. I have some experience and I've been on this show enough to know what was coming. But I decided, let's just start off doing exactly what SVS says. So if you look at their instructions, you know, they say you can put it here, a corner will enhance this, but it might get a little boomy. You can put it here, which would be between your TV and your speakers or somewhere on the front wall, and this is recommended. Or as their third choice, you could put it off on the side wall. I'm like, good, I've got all those. You know, I can do any of that. So I decided to do, like, if I was just somebody who knew nothing about it, it sounded to me like the word recommended was in the description of placing it up in the front wall, off to the side of your speakers or near the front left or right. So I put it in that spot where the Rock Band drums were, off to the right of my right speaker. Okay. And stuck it there. And actually my speakers are towed in just a hair, aimed at the center of the couch, more or less, not exactly. And so I just said, okay, it looks nice. I'm going to tow in the subwoofer just for the heck of it. It looks pretty. I'm going to push it back where it's the same distance from the back wall. It was about 5-6 inches from the back wall. And it's, you know, a little angled in just a hair. I know that makes no difference. It wraps around, the sound does, but still it looked cool. And I thought, okay, that's what somebody would do.
And that's where we should just mention, by request, you know, we've already given away that Lee received 2 of these subs, but we wanted Lee to go through the experience and share with listeners what it's like to start with one sub. Because, I mean, let's be honest, most people, if they're getting a subwoofer, are going to start with one, and maybe they'll work their way up to 2. Some people will take our advice immediately and go from 0 to 2 right away, but we wanted to explain the situation and go through setting up one sub as optimally as one sub can be set up first, and share that experience, and then get into the difference that happens when you get to 2. So that's where we're going to start. So don't think that Lee was just like out to lunch, not connecting the second sub right away. This was by our request so that we can share the experience.
Exactly. And like I said, I wanted to do it just like somebody would if they got one sub and had never had a sub before and just followed the directions. And I did that. And I think I'm going to just tell you, spoiler alert, I got really lucky with my room and the placement and everything about this, because I did what it said, which is run your room correction calibration on your receiver. So when I did that, the receiver was, it's almost like the receiver was really surprised. it turned it down 8 decibels in YPOW, and it was already at -10. They said, you know, make sure it's at that's where it is by default. The sub's own level is at -10 dB. The receiver turned it down 8 decibels from that, and it created, you know, in the parametric EQ, it has several bands it can do just for the subwoofer, and all it did was do one teensy little notch. Let me see if I wrote that down. Yes, at 39.4 hertz, it created a tiny little notch, dropped it down 3 dB. And I just looked at that like, wait, that means it's really good.
Or it means it's really bad and it can't do anything. Those are the 2 options. Either your room correctionist said this sub is already flat and this room is already, you know, giving a flat frequency response, therefore I need to do nothing but at 39.5 where there's a little bit of a bump there. Or everything is awful except for 39.5, where I might be able to make a difference.
However,
those are the two options.
I will say, if you were to do this type of scenario and your room correction, whatever that might be Odyssey, it might be Waipow, it might be Anthem room correction, whatever it is, if it had tried to put a huge boost in at some point, that would be a really bad sign. So I will agree with Lee that he did get lucky in at least one way, which is that Waipow with this setup did not attempt to boost a certain frequency by some tremendous amount. So that is unequivocally a good sign.
Yes.
Right. So just playing around after that, like I thought, okay, cool, let's see what happens. And playing around after that, I realized, and I wrote this down in my notes, that it's kind of ironic, Rob, that you have a 12-step program for 2 subs, because apparently I'm a bass addict, and I need to admit it. Yeah, that's what I wrote down in my notes. I like bass in all caps, because I had become so used to the boomy bass of my front speakers and the nature of that when accurate bass came in, and I knew this was going to happen, it was like, where'd the bass go? And you guys have talked about that before. And it doesn't even matter if you know it's coming. I've talked on the show about this. I've heard you guys say
I've talked about it.
Yes.
When I got my second sub, the first thing I said was, where the hell did the bass go? What's going on in here?
And you told me what was going to happen, and it did. And so there are no surprises here. But even though you know it's coming, you still go, is it okay? What happened? And so I cranked the bass up. And I was like, oh, let's get it back to where I want, and I'm like watching stupid stuff. At first I just watched, I think I watched Masked Singer or some nonsense, for a second. Like, there's the thumpy bass. But then I'm like, man, that sounds kind of ridiculous. Like, that's really fat. That's really straight. So anyway, I pretty quickly calmed that down. Because I turned it up on my amp and in the app, on my amp and in the SVS app.
Oh, and, right. I forgot the SVS 2000 Pro series does have the app. You can connect to your phone from your phone to your SVS and control it from your seat without having to get up and actually turn the knob or anything like that.
Right. Now, I don't remember where in this we were going to exactly talk about the app, but that's coming up real soon. But so the app, by the way, I love the app. I was really surprised that usually sort of smaller companies like SVS that aren't like Yamaha or Denon or something like that, usually smaller companies, their apps are a little flaky doodle, not really good looking. This thing is slick. It's like a night mode look, and when you first plug it in, it just tells you what to do. It explains before you don't have to ask any questions. It says, here's what this is, here's what this is, It connected. That is the least problematic Bluetooth connection I've ever made.
Nice.
Without a doubt. I was sitting, 2 feet from the sub when I first started using it, and ta-da. That was part of the instructions too, by the way, the little pamphlet that comes in the instructions that says, here's the app, here's how to use it. So kudos to them. They hired some good programmers. The look of it, and the usability of it, it's exactly what I would expect.
Right.
And we can talk about it more after a while. But yeah, so I made those adjustments, and then I played some movie clips and stuff, and I'm like, where is this? You don't know what to do with this situation at first. It's so different. And but I was like, back it down, stay cool. Let's do the sub crawl, because that's what you're supposed to do with one sub.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to dig into that. This is what we recommend all the time. It's called the Subwoofer Crawl. And Tom, you might as well go through the thing fully, because people might be joining our channel for the first time on this review, and this is an important thing to do. If you have one sub, we can get you good results at one seat. Pretty certainly, unless you have complete restriction on where your subwoofer can go. The subwoofer crawl does require you have at least a couple few options where the sub might live permanently in your room. But yeah, Tom, why don't you let people know how to do a proper subwoofer crawl, because people might have looked it up and there are things that we do not agree with almost everybody else's instructions. I'm
kind of nervous I didn't do it right now, so let's listen.
We'll find out. So the way this works is you have specific places in your room where you can put your subwoofer. It would be nice if we could put our subs anywhere. That would be great. But the reality of everybody's life is that there's furniture, there's doors, there's lights, there's chairs, there's all sorts of things in the way that make it so that you cannot put a subwoofer in a specific spot. So in Lee's case, he's identified 4-ish areas.
Yeah, like
that he
4
can,
point something, because that
Yeah.
sidewall could have gone left to right a few feet.
Yeah. So he's got like, 4 areas that he could put his sub, but which is the best? Which is the best for him? Well, the way that you determine this is as easy as it is silly. And that is you take the subwoofer and you put it where you're going to sit. That means, yes, you're going to put your sub on your couch. Now you're saying, well, wait a second, my sub weighs, I got this big sub. Is it going to hurt my couch? I don't know. Is it heavier than you? Because if it's not heavier than you, it'll be fine. Put it on the couch. Then we're going to play a bass sweep through your sub.
Yes.
There's a lot of ways to do this. There's a lot of ways. Now, some people will tell you, oh, go play a bass heavy track. I'm like, okay, well, if you want one note, that one note that's in that one song,
or a handful of notes, but
right.
Be a handful.
That one kick drum. I just want Metallica to sound right.
Right. I just want that one Biggie song to sound good on my
Yeah,
seat.
yeah.
Then use that. But if you would like all the bass to sound good at your seat, you play a sweep. And there's lots of places there's audiocheck.net where you can create sweeps and download them yourself, or you can go to YouTube and find them and all that. So they exist, and you're just going to play sweeps through your sub, and it's just going to go real low.
I found one on YouTube that did that, and
Right.
it did it kind of slowish, but it was like, that's good enough,
Yeah.
So you have to sit and wait a good, what was it, like 10 seconds or 15 seconds to get down through it.
Right.
Okay, did that.
So then, as it goes through, you're going to crawl along the ground where your sub would be, putting your head approximately where the sub would be.
Right.
And you're listening at this point. You're listening to that sweep, and what you're listening for is changes in volume. Drastic changes in volume. You want
Peaks and valleys.
That's right. If it gets real quiet during one section or real loud during another, that's not your good spot. You want to find the place that has the fewest changes in volume as the sweep goes through. So if you've got 3 spots, go in those 3 spots and say this is the best one of the 3. It might not be perfect, but this is the best one of the 3.
Okay.
And you would do that for all your spots. In Lee's case, he had 4 areas. He had, or maybe 3 spots in one area where he could crawl up and down a wall and say, okay, well, this one little area is much better than this. Because the thing to remember is that the sub is interacting with all the walls in your room and all the spaces in your room in order to create this space. So as it interacts with that, where it originates from, where the bass originates from, it's like dropping a pebble into a pool of water. You see the ripples come out. Wherever you drop the pebble into this little squarish rectangular pool of water, it's going to bounce off those walls, and those bounces are going to interact so that at that seat where you are sitting, they're going to interact right at that seat. So you want to make sure that the interactions are as non-destructive as possible, or or as good as possible, or as mild as possible.
Yeah,
so
in
that's what we're doing.
particular, you want to avoid any spot where when you put your head there while your sub is in your seat and you're playing a bass sweep on repeat, if you hear the volume drop really low, you want to avoid that spot, because no amount of boosting the signal is going to bring that bass back. The reason the volume got really low at a certain frequency at that particular spot is because you have cancellations of the waves that are bouncing around, the sound waves that are bouncing around your room. They're canceling at that particular frequency at that particular spot. And the reason the subwoofer crawl works in an overall sense is because of reciprocity. When you change, when you now switch, now you found out of the spots in your room that are reasonably good, you've avoided any places where you had a huge dip in the bass sweep. Now you put the subwoofer there and you go and sit in the seat, and it's reciprocity. The sound waves work in reverse now.
Right.
They're coming from that spot. You're sitting in the seat.
Good.
And that all works.
I did it right.
You did it right.
I did.
So what Rob said is very important about you don't want to hear any volume drops, because just like noise canceling headphones, what they're doing is they are sending out a signal that's on the opposite. It's basically a cancellation signal. And no matter how loud you turn up the volume of your subwoofer, that its own wave is canceling at your seat.
I will say the one thing I learned with a sub crawl is that corners suck.
They can.
Well, in your room,
they do.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they don't always.
Not always.
but they're the corners are the places where even if you're not sure what you're hearing, you know those aren't good, at least in my experience. All I have is my room to tell you about.
Right.
And I can't really get to all of my corners, but just for fun, I kind of moved the door open to the den and stuck my head up in that corner. It was, whoa. It was
maybe the thing you can stress, Lee, is that it was moving from position to position while the sub was in your seat and playing the bass sweep. It was not a subtle thing. For people who haven't done a subwoofer crawl, sometimes they're trying to imagine that, they're going to have to listen really intently to hear these minute little different. No, it is not a subtle thing. Yeah. The way that bass sweep sounds, and I mean, it's fun when you know that bass sweep is playing every single one of those notes at exactly the same volume. That's the signal the sweep is sending. That is not how it sounds from spot to spot, and it is not subtle in its difference.
I will say, as much struggle and strife as I've had over the past month, one thing I got lucky on was my room treated me right, because when I did that sub crawl, I will say that also you can have your head in one spot approximately, trying to put your ear where the driver would be, right? And you can move your head 8 inches this way, different experience. And that's so neato. And I was like, okay, cool. And so, again, I got lucky.
Yep.
The place where that I just happened to put it at first was really good.
And that's okay. Sometimes that happens. I was like, okay. But
well,
now
it made me question. I felt kind of like, no way, right? Like no way I'm getting this lucky. Like YPAL liked it, barely put any room correction on it. My head liked it over there. The sidewall wasn't half bad. And where I think this is interesting, even though the room, I guess because of the foyer I talked about, even though my room sort of seems symmetrical to a regular human sitting in it, it's not. And one behind this chair was different than behind that chair.
Yep.
And again, more luck. The behind the chair spot that sounded pretty good was kind of across the room, almost symmetrically from front. And that's why I'm like, yes! The sidewall sounded fine too. I could find places up there that were good, but I'm like, that's going to be ugly. And I sure do like it up here, up front, right? So that's one of those decisions everybody has to make. Maybe you hear a place that that sounds nice, but that looks stupid just sitting there along the wall. So
did you listen to things with just one sub on as well as with two subs on?
Yeah. And I did.
All right.
The bass crawl that I did was with one sub. And that's why I said I got lucky, because I knew I was going to hook up the second sub, and I'm like, this other spot that sounds decent happens to be across the room in a manner that you guys described as where to put a second sub. So I knew that was coming, and I was like, okay, good. I'm putting that sub right where it was, taking it off the couch. I'm going to put it right exactly where it was because YPAL liked it. I liked it. We're good.
Now, before we get to the listening experience, we're going to tease this out a little bit longer in that you've mentioned the app. You mentioned that you liked the app. We've described the subwoofer crawl now. You've mentioned that you're using Yamaha's YPOW, but we want to make sure that we sort of highlight the features that the new 2000 Pro series offers. Because what SVS has basically done in this lineup is when they introduced their 16 Ultra flagship series, that was the very first series that got the app. And then they basically started bringing the app and their new amplifier design down the lineup. And so they replaced what used to be the 13 Ultra series with now called the 4000 series. So that got a front-mounted display like the 16 Ultras have, and the app. They then replaced what used to be the, the Plus, the 12 Plus series got replaced by the 3000 series now. And that got the app, but put all the controls on the back panel. They don't have a front panel on the 3000 series. Well, they used to have a 2000 series. That is now replaced by this current 2000 Pro series. And now they've brought the app to the lowest price point yet. And the controls on the back look very similar to the 3000 series. So the 2000 series amplifier and back panel look very similar to the 3000 series. It's clear how that, came down the lineup. So maybe you can just sort of highlight the actual physical adjusting things on the back of the sub, or just using the app. One thing we should mention is the app has two-way communication. So if you change something on the app, you can see that updated on the back display. If you change something on the back display, you can see it updated on the app. So what was the experience like using that?
Well, the basics are there on the back. The coolest stuff you can't change on the back, but you can change the level and the phase angle and What else is on there? I may have to look.
Just on the back panel there. Yeah, I mean, there's only a handful, only a couple of buttons that you can go through there. So there's obviously
but
the plus,
you can
minus,
change
go up
a
and down.
lot.
Yeah, no, you can do your volume, your fully variable
low pass
phase,
filter,
and the filters. Yeah.
The filters are back there. That's right. Okay. So, but I put the app on immediately, like the little pamphlet said, and I didn't mess with the back.
Okay.
So didn't have to. And I liked it that way. I was just going to say, I made a couple of notes about the app when I first used it. Let me see if I can read my own chicken scratch here. When you first connect, the only thing that was confusing about this whole app was it said what it was connecting to, and it was just a series of letters and numbers that did not match either the model or the serial number on the back of it.
Yeah, so it's amp identification.
Right. So that's going to be like something kind of like a MAC address when you're doing internet stuff. So it has its own little code that isn't the serial number or the model number, so that can be confusing at first. But I noticed afterwards you can edit the names. You can call them Sally and Fred if you want to, and I called them front and back, and it was wonderful. After I remember that, the one up front, the one behind me. So that's good. Hang on, I'm old. Let me put my reading glasses on.
Nice.
Look, I can see this now. The parametric EQ is wicked cool looking, but it says works best with acoustic measurement, and after you sit there and mess with it, you realize I have no idea if I'm making it better or worse.
Right.
So there's that. Otherwise, let's see. I did measurements. By the way, I was just going to say I did measurements in my room with the TV dinner trays where we always leave them because I'm being realistic.
Now that's YPOW measurements that you're talking about, and so I mean, what we can clarify for people is that we've seen the measurement. Basically, what we're seeing in the graph that Lee provided is what YPOW applied to the subwoofer signal once he'd gone through the subwoofer crawl and found the spot where all YPOW needed to do was one small little cut to the signal at one particular frequency. Now, if you didn't have any type of room correction that would do that automatically for you, if you could measure at least, or perhaps if it was a little bit more audible, you could have listened to the sweep, a marked sweep, and had an estimate of what frequency range needed to be cut, or perhaps boost a little bit. You could apply EQ to, it's up to 3 different frequencies, right? Built into the subwoofer itself, you can apply manually 3 equalizations. So, I mean, for fun, you could have put in your own little -3 dB cut at that frequency.
I could have copied it exactly because you can put in the app in the parametric EQ of the app. It's quite sophisticated. You can put the frequency, you can put the Q value, which is the sort of tightness of the
how
curve at
wide the application around that center frequency is.
Yeah. And you can put the decibel change, but I think it would be helpful, like if you had a system that didn't have room calibration, but and if you only had like one place where you could fit a sub, and you just had to put it there, you could with your ear at least take care of the worst peaks and valleys. You could help that.
And since you have the app in your hand, it saves you the hassle of having to get up and down and adjust things on the back of the sub and then go sit back down and listen or remeasure. You can do it all while you're sitting in your seat, holding the thing in your hand and looking at it. So yes.
And when you're doing Rob's 12-step program to 2 subs, you can change phase angle without getting off the couch.
Yes, that's coming up. Cool. Well, sub.
But one more thing about the app. One more thing about the app. You can only adjust 1 sub at a time.
Right.
Yes. That's just Bluetooth because it has to connect to one and then the other because Bluetooth sucks. So that's the other note I had about. I hate Bluetooth.
Seems like an awfully big stretch to go from can only control one thing at a time till it's awful. I mean, that seems...
Okay, no, it's not awful just because of that.
Bluetooth's perfectly fine. I have no problems with Bluetooth.
Just a couple of days ago, I was suffering trying to get my RBH earbuds because I gave them to Heather for Christmas a while back, and they just will not stay in her ears. So she can't hardly do anything, no matter which of the earbuds she tried, the little pieces. She has teensy little ear holes. She does okay if you get those kind that are like circles that are flat circles.
What does this got to do with Bluetooth?
It does, but what it has to do with Bluetooth is I was trying to hook up the RBH Bluetooth earbuds in my computer, and I just got mad and felt like I was 80 years old.
I see.
So
maybe the problem is you're secretly 80 years old.
That could
Sorry,
be
Grandpa. You can't figure out Bluetooth.
I'm a vampire, and I've been alive since the 1600s.
Honestly, I bought probably those exact same RBH headphones for my kids, and their Bluetooth was not great. I don't blame Bluetooth for it. I blame the headphones. But let's go on.
Yes,
okay.
one sub.
All right, let's move on.
Sub now.
Right.
We want the experience of. So
right.
you have been listening to a 5.0 system for ages. Tower speakers with big drivers in them, capable of playing loud. But now you finally have a sub where you can do.
Are those self-amplified?
No.
Do they have amplifiers in them? So it's just full-range speakers being driven by your receiver with 15-inch side-firing
woofers.
Let's call them woofers.
They're woofers.
And which will be, by all accounts, including by your receiver, labeled as full range.
Yeah.
Correct?
They are, yeah.
Yes,
well, but
okay.
my receiver is very optimistic about speakers, even my surround speakers, which are 3-way 8-inch speakers that are pretty deep and stuck up into a bookshelf. It was like, oh, those are full range. I'm like, no, they're not. There's no way they are.
Well, particularly when you tell your system you do not have a subwoofer, it will automatically set your front, left, right speakers to full range. There, you don't get a choice about that. But now you have separated the deep bass producing element of your system. You've been able to position it in your room relative to your seating location in a spot where your tower speakers, you can't put both of them there. That wouldn't result in good stereo imaging with both of them to the right of where your current right speaker is. So what did you listen to and how did it sound? Keeping in mind for folks listening, this is one speaker now, or one subwoofer now.
Right, one sub. So yeah, I did the one sub listening for quite a while actually before I hooked up the second one. And you know, before with no sub, those giant speakers of mine, they had an interesting big fat bass and they had a nice sort of kick drum chest thumpy note that they were pretty good at, and it was really fun. And so I never felt like I was lacking much bass. But when you get a good sub, apparently,
who knew? If only someone could have told you this information beforehand. If only
like,
some Nostradamus-like figure in your life.
There was no way to know. Who would have thought? I think I've heard a very famous person say, "Who would have known it was complicated?" But yeah, it was quite an experience because the first thing, like I said before, that you notice is everything just seems like it's gone. You know, at first, what happened? This seems wimpy. But then the more you watch different things, things that are mixed properly, and I should have known this too, but now I'm so picky. Now I can tell who's a better audio editor of movies because suddenly, I put it this way, everything that is supposed to be big now is big when it's supposed to be big. Now I have so much more respect for people who are mixing these things because now I'm hearing when you can like a train in a movie sounds train sized. The Incredible Hulk I happened upon on a channel as I was flipping around, and as he stomped, it seemed, that seems like a several 100-pound gorilla-sized bonk. You know, like the everything just sort of made more sense as you kind of let it be what it was supposed to be. I had to calm down about the thing that I knew I was going to do, and that's where's my bass. But I think that's the key. Is like, well, when Tom called me when I was ill, and it's like, well, give me the TLDR, give me the short. It's like accuracy. That's the overall effect. Is like, I can tell now that I had boomier bass and less accurate bass because before I could get big kabooms when I was supposed to get big kabooms, but I was also getting big kabooms during like a sitcom theme song, right?
Right.
like the Brooklyn Nine-Nine theme song, for instance, as it starts, has a crazy doom, doom, doom bass line that just rocked the house, you know, and it's not supposed to do that. It's not a nuclear
the old one-note
right?
bass. That's what kind of sounds like was going on previously.
Right.
So how did it sound from seat to seat, though, is my question.
Honestly, and here's where when we talk about two subs here in a second, I wonder if I did everything right, but it already sounded pretty damn good across my couch. Like if I move to the left, move to the right, set in the center, all the way across, pretty good. Now, if you go sit off to the side, you start to think, okay, this is a little different. And I never went back and played bass sweeps again once I got it where I wanted it to be with the one sub. But it all felt sort of subconscious, subliminal. Like, am I correct that it sounds weird over here? I questioned myself a lot during this whole process.
Probably right. That would be expected.
So it was more subtle than you would think because you'd have to just do it with a ton of test tones. If you're watching regular material, it's not like things are ruined off in the side seats.
Right.
It still sounds like a big kaboom movie, if that's what it's supposed to be. The music still sounds good over there. But yeah, it was kind of a subliminal, like, I liked it better on the couch.
Well, you just said the thing I wanted to touch on just before we move on to the dual sub setup, because a lot of times we'll see people who will say, oh, I'm fine with having a subwoofer for movies. I'm fine with having it for TV, but never for music. I would only ever use a pair of full-range speakers for music. This is a very common thing that is sometimes said and still recommended. So did you listen to some music? What was the experience like having the bass changed for music?
Let me tell you. The 3 things I knew I was going to watch on purpose: 2 movies, Apollo 11 documentary, the one that came out recently with the real footage of the real thing, and Interstellar happens to be a favorite movie of mine. And the reason I picked those 2, I love Interstellar. You didn't like it? Okay, well, we'll talk later.
We'll talk about that later.
That was very cool. But there's part of Interstellar where they're going into the wormhole for the first time on the spacecraft, and there's crazy big sort of keyboard music and
organ music,
organ music and a big, huge rumble. And it shut my previous amp down.
Right.
Do you remember that? And you told me to check and see if the speaker wires were loose and all that kind of good stuff. Nah, it was just a wimpy amp. It was a cheaper amp. This is an amp that I have now that retails for like $1,300. I got it for like $600 and some refurb. But it's a much beefier amplifier. And now with these subwoofers, let me just say this. The Apollo 11 launch is another new experience in your life. If you get a good sub and you get that Apollo 11 documentary, the launch, because again, also there is like keyboard synthesizer music at the same time. They actually went back and got like period accurate synthesizer equipment to make the music for that movie, which I think is amazing. And they're using footage. Anyway, I'm a space nerd. Loved it. I could talk all day about that documentary. It's so good. But that just went to another place is all I can tell you, even with one sub. So when you pull this sub out of the box, you think, oh, it's cute, kind of heavy, looks good, nice futuristic looking product. And you think, how is this going to, blow me away like my 2 15-inch woofers in my speaker? And then you realize, and again, I knew this intellectually, but you have to grok it. You have to really plug it in and feel it, that it is made to do this. Whereas my tower speakers are made to do all the frequencies as good as it can. But a subwoofer, duh.
What about music?
I did. The Beyonce concert. There is a Beyonce. I like Beyonce.
That's fine, Grandpa. I just didn't peg you for a Beyonce.
Well,
fan.
I like dance music. I like good thumping, driving beat. I like electronic music and stuff. This was a good concert. It was the Coachella concert where she came back. One year she couldn't attend because she had a baby. Anyway, she came as a 2018 concert, I think. It was called Homecoming. And there's a marching band, which my wife is super familiar with. She was in the marching band in college, and I experienced that a lot. So there's her music, and then it's a live concert. So I know what a live concert in a big venue ought to feel like, and by God, it felt like it. It was right. It was accurate.
Yeah.
Again, I talk about accuracy. My tower speakers made a good go at it, and it sounded really fun, and I got to go to chest thump. But this thing, this SVS SB-2000 Pro, again, accuracy. It just, I don't know how to describe it. I don't have a good set of words for this because I'm not Audiophile Magazine,
It's that sense of realism. It's that sense of being able to more easily suspend your disbelief, which is a lot of the fun of both music and movies. For the people who seem to think that you need 2 different systems and one can have subs and the other one doesn't. No, we're talking about a range of frequencies that exist in nature and with, electronically created sounds. But when you get to hear them in a way that is accurate to what the signal was requesting all along, it helps you suspend your disbelief. It helps create that illusion.
I kept telling Heather, everything sounds the right size.
Right.
So like however big something was supposed to be in the world of the movie, suddenly it sounded like that. I can't remember maybe it wasn't Incredible Hulk that I was watching. I couldn't believe I watched Incredible Hulk. It's stupid. But I watched it because it was some pretty good sounds. Yeah, it's got some good sound. And there were points in there where like, I think I felt the fear note. Like there was part where I think I just finally felt a frequency quite a bit lower than my speakers used to be able to do. So, you know, my Yamaha towers, they could get down to maybe 30, a little below 30, probably rolled off if I had to guess. And these go down to 19.
Yeah, well, one thing we should mention, we didn't mention with the specs, but I mean, they're rated at plus minus 3 decibels from 19 hertz up to 240 hertz, meaning that, you know, if you drew a line there, nothing would go above or below 3 decibel variance from that median line, all the way from 19 hertz at the bottom end up to 240. And one other thing to mention about that digital signal processing is that, you know, sometimes people will point to another sub where they just kind of let the woofer run free, the woofer and the amplifier just run free. And if you play like just pink noise through that, they might say, well, here's a sub that's about the same price or maybe even a little cheaper, similar sized driver, similar sized amp, and oh, look at this, you know, playing this pink noise, it can get a little louder than this SVS. And it's like, but do you want it to at just like 1 or 2 frequencies? You know, this is keeping more rigid control using that digital processing. So that part of it is that it keeps the subwoofer itself very linear in its response as you turn it up.
Right. As I understand it, you can't overdrive it. It's going to protect itself. And I kept having to tell myself that, especially like Apollo 11, because you think, oh my God, here we go. Here comes the death note where it's going to click off. Never came, and it felt enormous. I'll tell you this, we live maybe 750 feet if you drew a straight line to a train track, and freight trains go down there pretty regularly. It's one of those things you get completely used to after we lived here just a few days. A lot of trains in this town. And when people come over sometimes and they hear, what is that? Oh, that's the train. Oh, wow, gosh, that train is close. There was at least one time where I was like, is that the train? Oh, it's not the train. Like, that's a new sound, because it was a new sound. It was a new sound for my ears in my living room. There was that deep something where it was like, you know, like whales, right? Like there was one point where it was like a sort of it was after some big boom hit in Incredible Hulk, I think, and it was trailing off. And you could just feel you couldn't quite hear it, but you could.
Subsonics, hence the name subwoofer, and why we so often call other things bass modules that claim to be subwoofers, because they don't really get subsonic. Well, the last thing before we move to the dual subs, because we're going to get to that next, but wanted to mention your experience that you mentioned to us, that it isn't only in the bass that you noticed a difference.
It fixed other things.
Tell us about that.
Yes, even with the one sub, the center channel got better, or seemed to. The dialogue, the sibilances in voices. I swear to God, I could hear people talking better. And could that be because my front, left, and rights were distorting because they were trying too hard to make the bass or something?
They were probably
I don't know.
masking.
Or is it psychological? I don't know.
Distortion from the woofers or something else in the room could have masked it, but
some other vibration.
No,
but it was a perception thing, right? It just seemed better to me.
I mean, the same thing happens when you put room treatments in behind your head or something like that. When you're like, I can understand the dialogue. You put some, room treatments behind your couch, and all of a sudden, I can understand the dialogue. With it was always there.
Right.
It was always being great. And this is again one of the reasons why we're constantly harping on proper placement of subs and everything else is of speakers and everything, is because a lot of times your speakers are perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong. People are like, oh, I got to buy new speakers. I can't understand any of the dialogue. Well, let's talk about everything other than your speakers. They're like, no, I just need to know what speakers to buy. That's really not your problem. The problem is there's just all these other problems in your room, and that's what's masking the dialogue.
Well, that was just something the reason I gave that as a note to you guys, I wrote that down. It's like, why does it seem like I can hear voices better? And maybe just some
that distortion
thing isn't vibrating.
In your room, the distortion your speakers were as they were trying to hit those subsonic frequencies that they couldn't hit. That distortion was certainly covering up and making other things harder to hear. Would be my guess. And
it became more pronounced with two subs, but also the dynamic range of things. How intensely strong something could sound while something was just so gentle previously. And Tom, when we came to visit you in Florida and we got to watch a movie in your home theater, one of the things that struck me was the clarity. Now, you do have more expensive speakers than I do. They're better they are probably objectively measurably better. I bet your speakers in my space might not have the same, you know, YPOW compensation on the high end, especially because all my speakers need a little extra oomph according to my amp.
Right.
But yeah, so anyway, it was a very pleasing thing. It was nice. I couldn't explain everything I was experiencing.
So you're saying that getting a real subwoofer, placing it as well as you could, even if it was just one subwoofer, made your entire system sound better.
It did.
Oh, man. I really wish you had had a really good friend who could have let you know about that before.
Yeah, I wish somebody would have been
you're
like,
stuck with us.
Yeah, I don't know. It's too bad y'all never mentioned this.
Never brought it up once. It's been our little secret.
Well,
Never
now
talked
the
about
thing
it.
that we've been teasing all along, he got
Right.
2 subs. He's going to use 2 subs, but important to have all of that groundwork beforehand. Now, we're not going to go through the entire procedure. What we're going to mention is
Right.
that I did write up a 12-step guide to setting up dual subwoofers. It's written up. We'll have the link for that article that I wrote posted in the show notes for this episode. If you're finding us on YouTube, it's down in the text details below this video. You could also just search on Google AVRant 12-step guide, and that'll be the thing that comes up.
That gives it to you.
So we're not going to go all the details of the 12 steps itself, but at my request, Lee went through them, and perhaps you can share the experience of going through the 12-step guide.
Right. As you probably see in my notes that I gave you, I didn't love the 12-step program.
I never promised anyone would.
No, I didn't.
I feel like everybody who goes through it should get like some sort of badge.
Yeah.
Some sort of I survived Rob's 12-step program. Because
I'll be honest.
It is excruciating.
I don't know if I did it right, and I didn't like it. So, but I get it. I get what it's getting at.
Those
right?
jokes just write themselves. You cannot set me up like that, Lee. You cannot set me up like that. I like your wife, and I don't need to be making that. Don't do that to me, Lee. This is a family podcast.
I know it's hard to hold back and not make the jokes that need to be made. But let me just tell you, when you're doing the sub crawl, you get teased by your wife.
I'm sure
that's
you
a thing
do.
that happens. You get like some cat calls and stuff, but okay. So that's fine. Anyway, so yeah, the first step is to level the subs. As a general thing, like that's what you're getting at the first stage.
Level match them so that at your
Level
seat,
match them, right.
the 2 subs sound the same volume level, or if you're looking at it on a sound pressure level meter, they will measure the same at your seat. Because, yeah, just to say, the 12-step guide is going to tell you in a room that isn't a rectangle, try to put them basically as far apart from each other as you can. So if one's on your front wall, put the other one on your back wall. That's basically the
And
first
that's
step.
what I did because that back, I'm like, okay, that didn't sound too bad when I was doing the sub crawl, and it is nicely placed across the room. So one sub is, I think was like 9 feet. Now the other one's like 11 feet.
Sure.
So yeah, it's 11 to the
pretty
front
close.
one and like 9 to the side or something like that. So it's pretty good little separation. And that leveling it, I just really wish I had like some professional calibration equipment or something, because all I've got is my phone and a dinky little app that measures sound pressure level, and the mic that's on this phone, and this phone is from 2016. But the phone seemed to think I had them at the same level, but you kind of have to sit there and stare at it as the test tones play through from the amplifier. You know, and you just kind of have to watch it go 72. Okay.
Yep.
So that's right. And the 2 subs never quite sounded exactly the same to my ear holes.
Right.
The phone was happy, and I was like, good enough. So like moving on, because it was starting to drive me crazy. The bass across the couch seemed to sound fine for a wider range of phase angles than I thought it would. I thought for some reason I was going to hear this moment where magic happened.
So just so that people know what he's talking about, basically the gist of the 12-step program, most of the steps are sitting on the couch and adjusting the phase of one subwoofer until it sounds as good as it.
The idea is that you're still playing a bass sweep on repeat like you were with the subwoofer call, but now you're not caring about only one position. You're caring about, I will say, typically 3 positions, like a 3-seater couch. And what you're now listening for in the bass sweep with two subwoofers playing is uniformity, not necessarily linearity where the entire sweep sounds the exact same volume all the way through, but uniformity, so that if there are ups and downs in the volume of the bass sweep, that it's the same ups and downs no matter which seat you're sitting in. And yes, as you slowly, ever so slowly change the phase of one sub, which you got a little bit easier because you didn't have to physically get up and down to move the phase knob. You could use the app.
Oh my God! Can
you imagine having to go behind the sub every single time you wanted to do this and do it again?
I can, because I've done it.
I don't know that I would have done it, honestly.
Right.
Dude,
like,
I cannot envision a world in which I'm doing this 12-step program. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I would have to literally hit bass rock bottom before I would do this. I mean, like...
I will say, you do start to question your sanity after a while as you're sitting there ticking that phase back and forth, and you think you heard something, and then you get back. I will say, if you flipped it to 180, you could tell.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not insane. Right. If you flipped it to 180, it was wrong. And let me just tell you, my experience with what is meant by phase, I understand it from back in my radio production days. If you had something out of phase completely, like you had a mono signal, but one of your headphones or one speaker was out of phase, and you were in between those two speakers, it would sound like the sound was coming from, to paraphrase the Beatles, within you and without you.
Right.
It was everywhere it was. It was weird. It just kind of did strange things and made you feel strange, and where's that is wrong. So you knew you had something out of phase. I remember I had a problem once. We wired up a cable coming out of a mixer wrong one time. My co-host flipped the phase.
Reverse polarity,
we reversed the polarity on one XLR cable accidentally, and for like 5 live band performances, no one listening in mono heard any of the instruments, or only heard some things. Like it fully canceled anything that happened to be in mono, and so you just hear like the cymbals, and if a horn was off to the side, you heard that, and crazy things. And I didn't know it until one day, like my co-host's wife called to say, all I can hear is the guy singing. Like, what are you talking about? It's like, it sounds great to me. Well, it's good enough, right? Anyway, long story short, I had to figure out a way to fix that problem in a recorded file where I didn't have separate tracks. So, and here to make it work. Anyway, you don't want to hear this story. You would want to hear this story, but no one listening wants to hear that story.
I have no idea what you're talking about anymore, but go on.
Okay, so anyway, there was a really big problem I had to fix in a sound file where it was very hard to figure out how to flip the phase of one side and then make the whole thing mono instead of stereo, and I magically made it work. Anyway, so I had some experience with phase, and I think that's what was making me so mad. It's like, I know what phase is. I can picture how it is trying to push that sound file forward and back coming out of one sub so that you don't create as many peaks and valleys in the room, smoothly cancel. I can picture the bathtub of water and the waves hitting each other and smoothing out. But it drove me insane. I never could quite get an obvious, like I knew that at these lower phase angles, it seemed fine to me.
Yeah.
Right.
And finally, I just kind of had to give up and go, somewhere in these low numbers
and
is
that
the
can
right number.
Absolutely be the case. I mean, to explain a little bit about why it was so different from a recording of musical instruments playing versus two subwoofers playing bass sweeps is because, once again, the bass is inseparable from the room. The higher frequencies are not. The higher frequencies, you can gate out the room's response. You can, in a measurement, you can say only measure for this many milliseconds and you won't get a reflection from the room in a high frequency. But in a low frequency, they're inseparable. The bass sound waves are so long that by the time the microphone has registered that sound, it's already bounced around the room probably 2-3 times, especially down at 20 hertz. So adjusting the phase on a subwoofer doesn't click in your ears the way adjusting the phase on higher frequencies do.
Thank God.
And but it's also the case that you aren't going to get like one perfect setting. You're going to get several where, and all you're looking for is close enough. You're looking for the uniformity as I move from seat to seat is not drastically different. Everything generally goes up and down in the same spots. And once you've got that, good enough. You don't have to go farther than that.
At least I understood that concept, and that's why, like, after a while, anything in low numbers below, I don't know, maybe 25 at least, was like, I don't know. So it's nice to hear that I wasn't going to hear a magic moment or anything.
No, it does.
No.
There's no click. But
Right.
but I mean, it's good that you did the experience of you went to where clearly as you moved from seat to seat, it did sound different. So you know that yes, adjusting the phase does make a difference.
It's a real thing.
It's
yes.
a real thing. It
I
makes
knew
a
I was.
difference. And
I knew it was working.
you know,
at least.
sometimes you're gonna have the confusion because you're gonna start in a place that's already good, and from
Right.
there on you only make it worse. But some people are gonna start in a place where it's really bad, and then it only gets better. So we can't really predict that in a room that isn't a perfect rectangle. We can't really predict that, and it sounds like in your case, you basically lucked out multiple times.
I think so.
Where
do think
you
so.
started was pretty good, and that can be the case. That can absolutely be the way it happens.
Right.
It
I
isn't.
think I absolutely lucked out.
For anyone
I do
else,
think I lucked out.
for anyone else listening, that isn't necessarily what's going to happen in your room. So that's why, yeah.
Maybe Rob could sit on my couch, move back and forth, and go, "This needs to be at 10 degrees."
No, it's not going to be like that. It's going to be this. This got close
Okay.
enough where if I apply EQ, it's going to do a reasonable job of applying the same EQ no matter where I'm sitting on this couch. It's
Good.
not going to
Oh,
make
that-
one spot better while simultaneously making another spot worse. That's all we're really looking for.
I'm truly relieved to hear that, actually, because I was wondering, am I deaf or lucky? I wasn't sure. So maybe I'm lucky because I think my room, I got lucky on this situation because, again, the Wipeout stuff, after I did the whole 12-step program, I wanted to know, what does my receiver think?
Right.
So I ran Wipeout again with 2 subs hooked up.
Good.
And here's what's really interesting. Predictably, it moved the subwoofer level down even further. It had it at -8. It went to -10, which is as low as it goes. And so it may have wanted to go to 11 because what am I looking at?
You
About
could have
3
turned down
dB?
the subs a little bit themselves.
I could have.
The volume
I
dials
could
on
have.
the subs
And
That would have been the next logical thing to do, Rob. Yes.
Yeah, but dude, it sounds really good. I don't want to turn it down.
Do you want it even more accurate than before, or do you want to? You still want a little boomy? Do you there? Yeah, that's what you want.
I think so. Dude, it is good. It's just good. So I'm just straight up telling you.
Hey, you know, you do you, man. You keep your bass as loud as you want. Just it's gonna be weird when you got your subwoofers bumping inside and you're yelling at people to get off your yard at the same time. They're like, "What?" I know. Mixed messages. I have no idea what's going on here.
That's a thing. I've complained that I'm the old guy mad at young people for not turning things up. What kind of boring crap are you listening to? Could you please crank that? What are you doing wrong, kids? Because people are listening to this sort of ethereal, sort of pretty, just easy listening kind of electronic music. I'm like, what happened to guitars? Did they all break? So yeah, I'm old and I want people to turn it up. But yeah, also my left, center, right levels changed too. Let me see if I can find that note.
Shouldn't really happen, but
I know.
I mean,
so when I did it with one sub, it was the left and right speakers that had it 0 dB change, and it took my center channel down by 2 decibels. Not much, no big deal. When I ran it again, and I swear I put the mic in exactly the same spot. I'm so OCD, I swear to God. But I know it could have been off by just a little bit. But what's interesting, it turned the left and right speakers up by 2 dB and left the center at 0. So they were still relative to each other the same, but up 2 dB.
Every time I run Odyssey, I get different results. So don't worry about it, Rob.
And the surrounds went up by like a decibel or a decibel and a half.
That's nothing.
The surrounds went up.
That's
That's no big deal.
placement.
But yeah, here's what's interesting. The Wipeout sub room correction graph, the parametric EQ for the sub, did change. You know, I told you when it was one sub, I had a little tiny notch, -3 dB at a particular frequency, 39.4. Now it made a slightly more complex curve, but even gentler. So it like 31.3 hertz, it brought it down a really tight bit at that hertz, brought it down by a decibel and a half. At the 49.6 hertz, it brought it down by half a dB, and did a little half dB at 62 hertz. And so I'm like, I think I got it.
That sounds.
I think I found two good spots.
It does sound that way. Now, I started this podcast off by saying that either that means that it was really, really good or really, really bad. But by doing all the stuff that you've done, it ensures that it was really, really good. That's
I think it came out great. And watching stuff after 2 subs.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is the big thing. Let's highlight this. Let's flash some lights on it. This is 1 sub that you, in some ways, got a little bit lucky. You were saying with the 1 sub, as you moved from seat to seat on your 3-seater couch, weren't noticing a gigantic difference in the bass response anyway.
I'll say it's like subliminal. Like you may be over here laying on the armrest.
Yeah.
Over here, maybe. But yeah, not bad.
And for some people, it's going to be worse or similar to that. But not everybody's going to luck out and have that experience with just the 1 sub. But this is the big headline. This is 1 sub versus 2 subs, having gone through a full setup procedure in both instances. And this is, you got 1 sub as good as it can be, and now you got 2 subs as good as they can be. And what was the difference?
The first note I wrote down was dynamic range for some reason. I mean, I told you before, things that were supposed to be big were big, but it just seemed like everything opened up. Now I feel like a snobby audiophile writing about like a turntable and it had black backgrounds or some nonsense like that, because I don't have a good way to tell you, but I feel like just now I'm in a theater box in my room, right? And it sounds fantastic is what I'm trying to say. The dynamic, like we cracked up, we were watching an episode of Family Guy. Family Guy. And the crashes and booms were great. And the music was great. Like we're watching a hilarious animated cartoon.
Actually, Family Guy has really good sound production with really skilled sound artists. So that's
they
not
really
a bad
do.
thing at all.
And so maybe that was a great thing to be listening to.
Yeah.
Maybe I would tap up the overall, because I'm a bass addict, dude. I have to admit it, y'all. It's so pathetic. I love it so much. So probably I'm going to calm down after a while. I've been enjoying when we have watched a movie, it's so good. And it's just meaty. It's, deep, rich, chocolatey bass notes that you want in the room. It's almost, my brain kept thinking there's something on the floor. If that makes any sense. All I can tell you, these subjective weird feelings I had, it's like, the floor is lava thing when you're a kid.
But all of them were drawing you more into the experience and making it that much more convincing that you're actually sort of like within the thing that you're watching.
Yes. That's the best way to put it, is now everything just seems more realistic. It seems a little more effortless. The whole system seemed like, before I always was struck by how, ooh, man, my speakers never seem to be stressed. Isn't that fun? I can rock these windows and vibrate them, and people across the street can feel it. And that's true. But now it feels like, ooh, it just feels like a different space. The sitting on the couch, wherever you are, it just feels like you're in a thing.
Well, and you're a really good candidate because you've described before, you're a person who likes to actually physically move around while you're watching. You are not a person who is sitting there still with your head in a vice. You're not even close to that. You like to move up, down, left, right, and change your positions. You're actually the perfect candidate to describe how that... Like how having the 2 subs versus 1 affected that part of your listening.
Oh yeah, I fidget so bad it drives my wife insane. She's like, "Get your foot off me! You keep moving your toe." Like I move a lot. I change positions constantly throughout, like every 15 minutes maybe. And if I'm watching something funny, I guffaw pretty big. Like I'm gonna literally do a knee slap and fall over forward and come back up. It's like I'm listening to things from all kinds of positions. I even like to sit on the floor sometimes, just at night. And I will say, on the floor, it's bigger.
You're probably getting some actual physical transference at that point.
Yeah,
I was going to say,
when you sit on the floor, it is like the floor's lava. and there, but it's fun. Like, let me just swim down here in the deep end of bass. So I liked it a lot, man. The experience was fantastic. It is as though the subs relieved those front speakers of a burden that they were probably sick of having. And again, I knew intellectually that was going to happen. And it doesn't matter how much it's going to happen. It's still freaking weird and surprising when it happens.
So let's Lee of today talk to Lee of last year, when Lee of last year was telling me that he was pretty sure he really didn't need subs because he had full range speakers and they're doing a fine job. What would Lee of today tell that Lee?
Well, what I would tell that Lee, now that Lee was sort of affected by what I call my dad phenomenon, which is afraid to spend money.
Yeah, I understand
and
that.
so if you're in a situation where something's working, you're like, why would I spend a ton of money? I got to fix this thing in the kitchen first. You know what I'm saying? That was that kind of thing. So I was never
totally fair. We're never going to tell somebody that not to prioritize things that really need prioritizing.
Yeah. I would. So, but maybe there were some things in the past that were bought that would have been better spent on a sub. I'll put it that way. Here's another analogy. Like, I wish I could tell myself in the 90s to not buy the high 8 camcorder. Go ahead and blow it out and buy a DV cam. Even though it's like a couple grand, do it, right? Oh, I wish I had done that because it would have looked a lot better. And so, yeah, if you're, I mean, if you are wondering, should you get a subwoofer? Duh, you should get a subwoofer. If you're wondering, should you get two, however, I don't know. Because you know how we've talked about where the leap from standard def to high def was a game changer, right? And the leap from no sub to a sub is kind of a game changer, especially if you don't have 15-inch woofers on your speakers. It is a game changer.
And even if you do have 15-inch woofers on your speakers,
it's still a game changer.
It's still a game changer.
It's a game changer to get a real sub whose job it is to make those notes. Whereas my speakers were trying to make all the notes, and they were doing a decent job for tower speakers. This thing is designed. The excursion on this woofer, I put the grill on it. I left the grill off for a while because I just want to look at it. It looked cool. I put the grill on it because I was a little disturbed. Like watching it moving, and I'm like, am I tearing that thing up? It's like, I'm just going to put the grill on. I don't want to know. Don't watch the sausage being made. Just enjoy the base, right? So it's a little disturbing how much it was moving. But yes, definitely get a sub. Should you spend $800 on this particular sub? Or I guess the better question is, should you get this SB-2000 Pro subwoofer from SVS? And, maybe it's easier to tell you when you shouldn't. If your budget is super tight and you can't spend that much on a sub, maybe get the lower line from SVS or another sub. I understand, but get a sub. If you have a gigantic space and you got the budget for it, get the bigger stuff. Get the big cylinders. Get the 4000 line, whatever you can afford. But I'll be darned if this isn't a very good price to performance point on the curve. And I'm the kind of guy that's always wanting to buy things that's in that point of the curve where price is starting to head up crazy, but that's about as good as performance you're going to get until you spend way more.
Yeah.
I feel like this is, these subs are probably a touch higher on the curve than I would normally buy price-wise. Okay. Like, I bet I would have ended up with the 1000s. The small, I bet if I just made the choice myself.
Sure.
Just
on price
how much
point.
am I going to spend?
Yeah.
Right. Just on price point. Being afraid is like, is this going to make all the difference? So I guess it's important for people to know if anybody's in my situation where you've had big tower speakers, full range, you're like, they're good. This is quite an upgrade.
Yeah, and
it is
the thing that we're always stressing on AVRant is that the subs and the room that they're playing in are inseparable. They are two parts of a single bass producing thing. And you can't just separate the sub from the room and expect for the performance to... If you took these exact same subwoofers to a significantly different room, the performance is not going to remain identical just because they're the same subs. So a lot of what we answer on AVRant is matching the right product, the right model of product to the room in which it's going to be used. And that's an important thing. And I mean, honestly, with your room that is not enclosed...
It's not. I left it open on purpose because, to be honest, I am never going to close the doors to make a pressurizing space.
And I'm
just not going to do it.
We would have been, because we care about getting like full reference volume at 20 hertz. We initially tried to get you to get the cylinders, which are ported. Same drivers, same amplifier, but a ported design that can actually have even more output right down at 20 hertz, at 19, 20, 21 hertz. It can output even more because we were matching that level of output to your room size. But there are factors where you just go, look, realistically, whether it's aesthetics, whether it's physical available space, and because we so badly wanted you to be able to have two of these things in your room and not just one, you're like, look, the sealed model is the one that's physically going to fit in the space that you have. And we're like, it's that is the sort of very reasonable compromise that we are completely open to talking
I
about.
might have gotten away from... I might have gotten away with it on the ported ones, maybe.
No.
Oh,
You have
maybe.
no idea.
Dude, they are
You have no
so
idea how big those are. You
Okay,
have
then never mind.
You have no clue how big those subs
Because
are.
right now, you guys
if
can
you were
see...
having a hard time getting the cylinder in there, you had zero chance of getting that ported sub in there.
Okay, okay, all right.
We're not talking about we're not talking about like just a little bit bigger than what you got.
Right.
We're talking like you will have to get somebody to help you move this thing.
All right, all right. Then no. Then
Yes.
no. Yeah, that's the thing. I build a cardboard box, people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you take the time to do it, because what's so strange, and you feel so stupid as a human being, I can look at the measurements. I can get out a measuring tape and hold it up.
Right.
That's what
But
I
for
did.
some reason, you have to know it like a monkey.
Yeah.
You need the box in front of you. I did that for like television screens, like back in the day, deciding should we get the 42 or the 50-inch way back when we bought the first high-def TV, and we cut out a piece of paper.
Yep.
And we held it up. And we held up the 42 and went, that is not interesting.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we held up the 50 and went, there we
And
go.
this is a three-dimensional object that needs to live
Yes.
in your room. You do
Yeah.
need to be well aware of
I'm-
what physical
I'm
size
really
it is.
happy with how it's fitting in. You can see in the picture that it slots right in next to my right tower speaker between the china cabinet, which the china cabinet has videotapes and dachshund stuff on it. And the other one is kind of peeking out behind a chair. It's
Yeah,
kind of
you would have
hidden.
had to move that chair forward if you got the ported versions.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
then I got exactly the right thing for my room, honestly. I think I got so lucky. Like I said, I've had some bad luck this past month. And I just got super lucky on, I think my room likes these subs. The subs are working like I want. I think I got lucky in my position because, man, it sounds really good, even though I'm not pressurizing a space perfectly. Like I said, I heard that deep fear note.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I know I'm getting lower
Well,
than I used to.
I know we probably got more to talk about, but I just want to say, Lee, when you go to bed tonight and you're lying there with your eyes slowly closed, I want you to think about that cylinder sub and how much more bass you would have gotten had you
No.
really convinced the wife, had you really pushed for it.
Dude,
You
look,
know,
I've already told
I'm just
you
telling
you're right.
how much
okay?
more bass you could have had
Look,
you just listened to
look,
us. Because
take-
a year from now, when you're talking to me about upgrades, the I told you
Oh my
so
God.
will be skywritten above your town.
I feel like
I
I've
will
moved
pay
the
a man in the
locomotive into
plane.
the living room already. You know, I don't see a upgrade coming anytime soon. And look, just Tom, take the win. You got. You're right about the subs. Please don't try to be right twice in one podcast. Maybe
see.
the cylinders are even more exciting. Maybe they are, but man, I've moved up in the world with these two.
I know.
So
Can't wait
you know,
can't wait till next year. It's going to be interesting.
Oh man, but you know, I hope I can. I'm going to try to do a little video about this.
Okay.
I got a bunch of sort of what we're going to call B-roll footage before I got sick, and I would now like to do the studio part of it where I talk to camera about this, and I just wanted to see if I could. So I'm going to try to make sometime in the next week or so a nice video, just me reviewing this subwoofer, covering what we just talked about, and try
Great.
to keep it kind of
Great.
short and concise. So we'll try to do that. But yeah, I'd love for people to give me recommendations on things I should watch and listen to see what I think. Like, what is your favorite bass experience in a movie or in
Jurassic
music?
Park 4K, the new Ultra HD version, is insane.
Okay, all
It
right.
is nuts.
Yeah, especially if it's anything I can find on Hulu, Amazon Prime, Netflix, and Disney Plus. For some
not
crazy reason, I can access all those. Thanks,
wonder
Mom,
how.
for one of those.
At Lee Overtweet on Twitter, folks. That's
Yes.
where you can
That's
reach
right.
out to him. Yeah, that's the classic description. You know, I've watched things and now I want to watch them again because my experience has now been altered by the upgrade
Yes.
of my sound system.
And I'm going to go listen to some more music. I haven't listened to a lot of music over the past few weeks.
Right.
I need to pop in some old favorites of mine. Like, I do like rock music. I need to throw in some Rage Against the Machine or Led Zeppelin and stuff like that. Where Metallica, like I mentioned, I know what a lot of those drums are supposed to sound like.
Yeah.
The rhythm section, right?
Yeah.
There's some songs that are like my favorite hard driving songs, literally driving in the car songs. Like
Yeah.
Heart's Barracuda is maybe the best rhythm line ever. There's what the Power Station did a version of Bang a Gong. Remember when some of the Duran Duran people made Power Station with Robert
Right.
Palmer? Yeah. So there's some very specific songs like Led Zeppelin, Whole Lot of Love. I know what it's supposed to sound like.
I just want to warn you that a lot of these good driving songs that sound good in your car, you put them in your accurate home theater system.
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
What?
Okay.
What
Well,
happened? What
that's
happened
okay.
to this? This used to sound good, and now it doesn't sound good. And it's the mixing sometimes is mixed for cars and not for fidelity. So just don't come screaming at me that you're something's wrong with the subwoofers because Led Zeppelin doesn't sound right.
Also, I have a friend from back in the radio days who is a DJ that tours, and he does some pretty intense EDM stuff.
Yeah,
I can't wait I need to go listen to his stuff. He was live on Twitch the other night. I missed it, and I wanted to listen to it. Yeah, it's on Twitch. That's that whole world, right? Different streaming.
This is like you're like the most sophisticated social media grandpa I've ever met. It's really interesting.
Well, because I started off like it's that radio station, man.
Like
it's that
40
radio.
years older than me, maybe.
Yeah, I'm a little older than you, but I do have a weird combination of grandpa interests and like millennial interests, and sometimes even Zoomer stuff I'm into. Right? Like I do feel like I'm the world's oldest millennial sometimes. Like I love sipping my fancy coffee and listening to EDM.
As a quick conclusion summary, we'll say the statement here that the getting the one sub set up properly, game changer. Getting the two subs set up properly, refinement of that. That's
game
often,
improver.
That's often the way that I look at it, and it's one of those things where I think maybe you can just say this quickly for us, Lee. Once you have it at that level of refinement, do you want to step back even a little bit?
No.
Okay.
Like, let me put it this way: my life wouldn't be ruined if I had to have one sub.
Okay.
And my life overall wouldn't be ruined without subs, but boy, would I miss it.
Right.
So I could live without two. I'd rather not. Don't want to live without one if I can help it.
There you go.
So that's where I'm at. And as far as this particular, I don't have a lot of experience with different subs, but I just can't imagine that this SB-2000 Pro compares poorly to other things. Like, I can't imagine. So maybe I'll find out one day.
Maybe one day.
Maybe one day.
Oh,
right, this is
they're grinning. Do I have more reviewing to do?
This is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. I want to thank Lee Overstreet for coming on the podcast and reviewing the SB-2000 Pro series subwoofers from SVS. Or SV Sound. I don't remember how they're going by these days.
They're just going SVS, but their website is still svsound.com. So you can check them out there, folks. svsound.com is the website.
Thank you very much, Lee.
You are very welcome. This has been really fun. I'm relieved at the end of this review because I felt like there was a lot of, I don't know, it felt like quite a burden. Like, I have to get this right.
You don't have to get it right. You just have to get it done.
Hey, done, and I think kind of right. I'm just relieved of it, especially that whole phase angle thing with two subs. Lost my damn mind.
Now you know what you're in
program.
for, folks. The people who've been like, "What's this 12-step guide all about?" Yeah, now you know what.
Don't go down the rabbit hole, Tom.
Pain
says.
and
Everybody's
suffering.
like, "Why is Tom always complaining about Rob's 12 cent?" Now you know. Now you
know.
see the other side, and Lee can't unsee what he
No,
is
The
seeing.
amount of
can't
text looks so reasonable.
It does. It's like, oh, that's all you have to do. Okay.
Yeah. All right. For AVRant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H.
And I'm Lee Overstreet. Now go out and listen to something.
Actually, stay in and listen to something.
For the time being. Hopefully you can listen to this in the future where you're allowed to go out again.
Yes, take it from me. Stay safe.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.